Hey guys, today I'll be making a video of a bit of a different nature than usual. With the xTW season almost at an end, I kind of want to talk about, well, the future of xTW and kind of what transpired this season. I think this season has been the poorest so far. I think many of you will agree with me. Factions haven't really been fighting each other, and well, the server crash kind of messed up some stuff. I'll get to that later. But I personally believe some changes definitely need to be made for everybody to enjoy xTW again. But before we go to those changes, we should probably discuss what actually the problems are in xTW right now. Like, why are factions not fighting each other? Why is everything so still? So I'm gonna be discussing what I believe these problems are, and also what I think would be good solutions to actually solve these problems for in the future. I think the main root of these problems lies in the fact that our player base is not as big as the one in China, which is rather obvious and pretty much unsolvable. So we should look at solutions that don't involve that. The first topic that comes to mind regarding that is the scoring system in xTW. We have 3 different tiers of land. We have the Vile Dragon Camp, the Swirling Dragon Camp, and the Dragon's Mead. The Dragon's Mead is really the place where all the ultimate fights really are supposed to take place, which right now is not the case. The way the point system is set up is that for Vile Dragon Camp, initially taking it, you'll get 10 points, and then every week afterwards you hold it, you get another 10. Right? And for Swirling, initially taking it, you get 20, and then every week after it, you get another 10. Dragon's Mead, you get 40 once, and then nothing, because it resets every time. That system works in China and is a good system because you get more points the higher the tier is. For us, however, it doesn't work like that because, well, yes, sure, if you take Swirling you get 20 points the first week and then 10 points every week after. But it's very different from the way in China, because for us it takes about 5 or 6 weeks after taking a Swirling Dragon Camp land before it gets attacked again. Simply because their player base is not as high and the amount of factions participating are not as high. Not every land gets attacked every week. So, while in essence, yeah, sure, you get 20 points the first week and then 10 points every week. But there's a different way to interpret the point system. In China you get 20 points for taking a Swirling Dragon Camp land, and then 10 points for every time you successfully defend it. Since it gets attacked every week, you have to successfully defend it every week, and then you get 10 points. For us, that's not the case. For us, taking a Swirling Dragon Camp gives you 60, maybe even 70 points. Sure, you don't get them that week, you get them spread out over the next few weeks that they do not get attacked. You get 10 points every week. It doesn't get attacked, you don't have to defend it. So you get 60 points for just taking the land. And then every time you successfully defend it, you get an extra 50. Because you get 10 points for the first week, second week, third week, fourth week, fifth week, so on and so on. So this creates a huge imbalance in points, because you get way more points than you get in Dragon's Mead. Which, yeah, sure, you know, if you look at the very short term, you get it spread out over weeks, but you definitely get it. It's not that you're not gonna get it unless the season ends, of course. Towards the end of the season, this obviously doesn't count. Now, I can give you a really good example of this being the case. The example being Origin. Many of you might still remember Origin, a faction at the start of the season. We lasted for a good 2 weeks, really good 2 weeks. We took a Vile Dragon Camp land and a Swirling Dragon Camp land, and after that we disbanded. We went, you know, we made a new faction, and well, everything's history. Origin was left with about, you know, like 20 members, and I think they managed to get an extra Vile Dragon Camp land, maybe even 2. But right, so they got a Vile, a Swirling, and then, you know, maybe 2 extra Viles. So what? They have like I don't know, 60 points, 70 points. Not exactly. They have more, because, like I said, you get way more points. It's just not right away, spread out over weeks, but you do get them. And I think this is a big problem, because there's no incentive to attack Dragon's Meat. Like, who in their right mind would attack Dragon's Meat? I mean, we had a faction attack Dragon's Meat this season. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but sure. But obviously, attacking Swirling is way better. And that's not good. The same doesn't really go for Vile Dragon Camp. While it kinda does, it does take 2 weeks before Vile gets attacked, right? Every week about half the Vile Dragon Camp lands get attacked. So it takes 2 weeks for it to go basically full circle and come back to the original land. However, the difficulty of factions attacking, because on our server there's a really big gap between the strong in our version of the game there's a really big gap between strong factions and weak factions. The difficulty of retaining your Vile Dragon Camp lands it's really easy. There's really low difficulty, right? Usually you're fighting like small factions, and as long as you keep your Vile Dragon Camps at a reasonable number, it's really easy to defend. Which means that it's a bit of a mess. So one of the problems is the point system, right? There's no incentive to attack Dragon's Meat where the big battles are supposed to take place, so the big battles don't take place. This brings us to the second problem. We've just established that no faction has any reason to attack Dragon's Meat, and instead they're attacking Swirling Dragon Camp. They're hoarding a large amount of lands in Swirling Dragon Camp simply because the amount of competing factions over those lands is not that high. Now, because factions are hoarding so many lands, they're gonna have a lot of battles every week. Having a lot of battles every week means you have to spread out your forces over those battles. Spreading out your forces over those battles means that if you have to fight a faction that is gonna send their full force to fight you, you're just gonna choose to not show up to that faction, right? You don't want to send 60 people to one battle so you can lose the other 2 battles because you didn't send any people there. That doesn't make sense. So simply because factions have many battles, factions get punished for fighting other factions. Other big factions. So there's no fight. Which is a problem. The only 2 exceptions to this I can really think of is Crisis, who chose to not get any lands and attack Dragon's Meat, and Vindicate. Now Vindicate does have a lot of lands, but they have a bit of an awkward distribution. I guess they did it accidentally. I can't believe they actually wanted it to be this way. But all their battles are in the same week every time. Like if you take for example next week, this coming weekend, they're not gonna have any battles. They're gonna have maybe 1, maybe 2 battles, which is very low. And then the week after that, they're gonna have 7 battles, maybe even 8. I mean, that's a bit high. I'm gonna go ahead and predict 7, which is a huge risk in itself. And that kind of brings me to the next topic. Now, before you get all mad and start fucking raging at me, I want you to hear me out first, right? The next topic I want to talk about is the server crashes. Now, we know this perfect world's not always stable, and some things go wrong and there's crashes and whatnot. And we kind of have to learn to live with that, which most of us have already done. But the way xTW is set up right now, server crashes have enormous impact. Like this server crash that happened, you know, although it was just 1 week, it had an enormous impact on the rest of the season. Now, the reason for this is that it can't be fixed. Once the server crashed, we're screwed. It cannot be fixed. Now, Perfect World tried to fix it this season, and I give them credit for that, right? They tried their best to fix the season. However, they used band-aids to stop the bleeding when we really needed towels. Because like I explained on my first point, with how the point system works, you don't get the points right away for retaining a land. You get them spread out over multiple weeks. Right, like I said, retaining a land gives you 50 points. Now that week there were 7 lands, I think 7. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was 7. I think it was a land of Tempest, a land of Karma, a land of Infamous, and then there were 4 lands of Vindicate that got attacked in Swirling Dragon Camp alone that week of the crash. Now, they did a rollback, and they were like, okay, you guys are not gonna get points for retaining that land. And if this was China, that would have been successful, right? They wouldn't get the 10 points for retaining the land. And then the next week, those lands would get attacked again, and they get a new opportunity to retain those lands. But like I said, that's not how it works here. The week after the rollback, those lands didn't get attacked. The week after that, those lands didn't get attacked. It was gonna, you know, it was gonna go full circle again before those lands get attacked. Which means that, sure, you know, they don't get the initial 10 points for retaining the land. But like I said, you get 50 points for retaining a land in our version of Perfect World. And this rollback only stopped the first 10. They still got 40 points for each of the other lands. To add on top of this, they also gained the opportunity to once again fight over retention, is that the word? I don't know. To keep those lands for even more points. Which means that if you add that up, I mean, especially for Vindicate in this example, they already got 160 points just for quote unquote free, and then they got the opportunity to gain another 200 points after that. Which, I'm not saying, you know, oh, they should have had 160 points less. For all I know, they would have just had the exact same points as they have now had the week just gone through, and they would have just beaten everybody. Because that's also an option, right? It could just be 0. It could be between 0 and 360, and I think that, take that, you know, remove the nameplates. I don't want to start this conversation of, should they have won the season, should Crisis have won? It's not relevant for this video. It's just for a faction to get anywhere between 0 and 360 points for free because of a crash, it kind of ruins the season. It's even for the faction that benefit from it, it kind of takes away from their victory, because, you know, maybe they would have done it by themselves. You know, then it's just worth more than if a glitch does it. So that kind of concludes what I see as the third issue. A server crash, you know, sure, they happen. We have to live with that, but for a server crash to be allowed to be that impactful is not good. We should not have that. Which brings me to the fourth issue, which is that maintenance right now for the xTW server is pretty much impossible. Now, after the rollback, I personally believe they were doing maintenance on the xTW server. They never confirmed it on the forums. I wrote some posts about it that they were doing maintenance, but while doing maintenance they were resetting the entire match history, which meant that it would just every time start attacking lands from, you know, the first one, and as soon as the later lands were up for conquest, maintenance, back to the first land, so the last lands would never get attacked. They've never confirmed this. I believe they took some steps to fix it. It's now no longer the case. But maintenance is impossible because of that. It takes too long for all the lands to get attacked for that to be a good time for maintenance. Now, I don't know if they want to do maintenance. I don't know how that even works. But it's also an issue, right? We can't do maintenance. And it's hard to solve, but I think the solution that I kind of personally thought of, it doesn't solve the problem. It greatly reduces the problem, and I think maybe that's good enough. And that brings me to my fifth and last problem. This one's a bit small, it's a bit silly. You could argue that it's not a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and call it the lack of transparency. Now, currently we have the situation where factions they're basically bluffing before the battle, right? Everybody's like, we're not gonna show up to you. Send 30 people to the battle. We're not there. And they send 30 people. Oh, you know, bamboozle. We have 60 people after all, and they send in 60 people. Now that's because there's no transparency. Factions have no idea, you know, how many factions are getting attacked by what factions. Now, there is a method to figure out exactly how many lands are getting attacked from a certain faction. Same method that I can basically say, like I said before, Vindicate next week, no battles, week after 7 battles. You can figure it out. It's just there really is no transparency, and that creates this bluff game, which, you know, you could say, oh, it's a healthy strategic element of the game, and I think, yeah, it's a strategic element, no, it's not healthy. It's not fun to sit outside of a battle and just wait. It's not. There's nothing that forces that, you know, quote unquote stalemate to end. Theoretically, people could just sit outside the battle for 2 hours and enter the last 5 minutes and hope that that would somehow give them an advantage. Not healthy, not good, but also not a big problem. So with that, we basically have our, what I think, 5 problems, right? First problem, point system, all messed up. Dragon's Meat, bad. Don't attack Dragon's Meat. Second one is every faction has too many battles to actually fight each other. It's very silly, but it's an issue. Third is the server crash. Server crash, not so much that it happens, but it has way too much impact on the score system. Fourth problem, we can't have maintenance to avoid server crash, because that too has too much of an impact. Fifth problem, no transparency. Like I said, small problem, but I want to keep it in mind because, you know, some of these solutions that we can come up with can solve that problem too. Now we're gonna start looking at the solutions, right? One solution you can use is to change the score system. Give people a reason to attack Dragon's Meat. That would slap out a lot of these problems. People won't be hoarding lands, because attacking Dragon's Meat would be better. Now, I don't think that's a good solution. With the number of Dragon's Meat lands, it's never gonna happen that all Dragon Meat lands get attacked in 1 week. There's too many Dragon Meat lands for that. Which means that there's gonna be a 50% chance that a faction gets a free win there, a PvE war, because, you know, if an odd number attacks Dragon's Meat, that's a PvE war, that's a free win. If you want to increase the rewards on Dragon's Meat, then you're basically turning everything into a lottery where, you know, one faction's gonna get lucky, free massive points for a PvE war. Let's not make this a lottery. That's not a good solution. Changing the point system, I think it has, you know, possibilities, but I think it's better to not do that. Not to mention that what I listed here as the average, you know, quote unquote average, is basically the average from what we noticed this season that you get for winning a certain land and retaining a certain land. This average is entirely dependent on how many factions attack a certain tier, right? Because it depends on how many weeks it takes before the land gets attacked again. So touching the points, probably bad idea because too many variables. Yeah, let's keep it at that. I think the obvious solution to look at after that is to reduce the amount of land, and I personally feel like that is actually the solution to everything, and I'll explain why. If you reduce the amount of lands, that means that hoarding a larger number of lands is more difficult, because basically the average pressure per land that you have goes up. I don't know if that makes sense. Let's say you have 5 lands and every week, bad example. Let's say you have 6 lands and every week 3 get attacked. Then the pressure is basically 3 lands per week from those 6 lands. If you have the amount of lands in that tier, then all 6 are gonna get attacked every week. So, you know, from 3 you go to 6, double the pressure, which means that hoarding lands is more difficult. Which also means that the amount of points you get for taking a land, or the amount of points you get for retaining a land, gets half, because, you know, it takes half as long for that land to get attacked again. And I think lowering the amount of lands is something we should do in drastic quantities. I'm talking swirling Dragon Camp land, that's the second tier or the middle, whatever you want to call it. It's the inner ring, not the middle, but the inner ring. Make that 8. I think 8 would be the perfect number. I think, because if you look at things, sure, not every server right now has 2 competitive factions. I'm not sure what's going on with Tizewell and Etherblade. They used to have QQME and Gold Diggers. I'm not sure if they're still relevant. I haven't seen them in a long time. But there was a time where we had 8 competitive factions, and I think that's a realistic thing we can look at. Now, what's going to happen is those factions are likely to take each of the swirling lands. Now the reason that is likely is because even the strongest faction cannot fight two of those other factions. If they both send 60 people, like, let's just keep the premise that Crisis is the strongest faction right now. I know Vindicate's gonna win, but let's just accept for this discussion that, well, it doesn't matter, okay? I think neither Crisis nor Vindicate would be able to beat 60 people of either Tempest, Infamous, Karma, you know, Echo, so on, so on. Which means that it's gonna be really, really difficult to hold multiple swirling Dragon Camp lands. Which means, you know, what are these factions gonna attack? Attacking swirling Dragon Camp land is not a good idea. Are we gonna attack Vile? I mean, yeah, we're gonna attack Vile. So we need to also reduce the amount of lands in Vile. I would just halve the amount of lands in Vile, because right now it takes about 2 weeks to attack all of Vile. Which means that if you halve the amount of lands, all of Vile gets attacked every single week. Which means that if you want to hold a large number of Vile lands, you're going to have to defend every single one of them every week. And in every single one of them, everybody's going to show up, because those people don't have a lot of lands. Because the smaller factions won't be able to hoard a large number of lands, because they too have to defend their lands every single week. Which means people are going to have to show up to each other. Not to mention that if you look at the amount of points you get from taking a Vile, Swirling, and Dragon's Meat, that's 60 every week. If you win Dragon's Meat every week, you get 60 points. If you want to rival that amount of points by just taking Vile lands, you're going to have to take 6 Vile lands and defend that. Which means that every single week you're going to have to fight 180 people? I guess average faction has like 30 people. 180 people every week? That's not gonna happen. No, you can't do that. I mean, maybe if you get really, really lucky. Vile won't be a viable strategy. Hoarding lands won't be a viable strategy. The only viable strategy is to attack Dragon's Meat. You have to fight other factions. So that's what I would do. I would reduce the amount of lands in Swirling to 8. I think more than 8 is not good, because that would immediately enable hoarding as a viable option, because I think after those 8 factions, I mean, not really 8 anymore, it drops down really, really fast in terms of faction strength. Now the amount of Dragon Meat's lands, obviously you don't need to touch that, because if there's only 8 swirling Dragon Camp lands, you can only have 8 people that attack Dragon's Meat, so you can never have more than 4 Dragon's Meat battles. So honestly, that's what I think is the proper model. Now let's take a look at the problems, right? Let's see if the solution that we came up with here actually solves these problems. The point system. Is the point system still relevant? Well, yeah, because what I showed, the graph with the amount of points you get, is no longer the case. You're gonna have to defend every battle every week, which is what China intended. So the point system that China intended is relevant to our current, scenario. Second problem, many battles. Our faction is gonna have many battles. They're gonna probably have 2. Well, 3, right? 1 in each tier. Vile, Swirling, Dragon's Meat. Vile, easy to defend. Factions with, a couple reserves, couple alts, should be able to defend 1 Vile. Swirling, it's kinda iffy. And then there's Dragon's Meat. Now, if you look at the relevance, would you win a Dragon's Meat and lose your Swirling at the cost of it, or would you defend your Swirling and no-show Dragon's Meat? I mean, the calculation, I can show you the calculation. It comes down to the exact same thing. So you basically choose depending on who you want to give the points. For you, it's the exact same thing. But let's say you're fighting a rival faction in Dragon's Meat and some random factions attacking you in Swirling. It's better to just beat that rival faction and then go back to Swirling and take your land back, because for you the points are the same, but your rival faction loses points. So you have this. It's a more competitive scenario. People wanna beat other factions rather than just no show and look elsewhere. Next problem, server crash. If the server crashes, is there a big issue? No. We can roll it back like we did now, but then there's not the 4 weeks after of you get points everywhere. You just get the points, and then the next week you just don't get the points because of the rollback, obviously, and then the next week you have to defend your land again because it gets attacked again. Now, next issue is the maintenance. Can we do maintenance here? Like I said before, this doesn't solve the maintenance problem, right? You're still gonna have the reset, and you know, what if not all lands get attacked in 1 week, because you know that doesn't always happen. Then you know, sometimes some lands get skipped, but it makes the issue much smaller, right? Because instead of having one land getting attacked 3 times and one land getting attacked 0 times, which happened this season, you're gonna have one land getting attacked 3 times and the other land gets attacked twice. Now, it's still different, but it's better. As for the no transparency, sure, there's still no transparency, but if everybody has in their mind that every land gets attacked, because there's not that many lands, there's enough factions for every land to get attacked, you know that everybody has X amount of battles. Now, after successfully stuttering myself through this video, I would like to hear what you guys think. I would not suggest to post it on my YouTube video, but instead post it on the forums, because that's when people are actually gonna read it. The GMs might read it. I really hope that the GMs actually take a look and actually think about it. But I think that's only gonna happen if people actually are interested in it. It's entirely possible that this is just me and nobody gives a shit. That's not unthinkable. Just let me know what you think. Or maybe you have a different solution. Maybe you want to do like a hybrid between changing some point stuff, changing the lands. You have different numbers in mind. Just keep in mind that if it's too complicated, Perfect World doesn't want to do it. Just, yeah, let me know what you think. Post it on the forums, preferably. Maybe let me know what you think about me doing these type of videos. That doesn't belong on the forums. You can just post it on the video. Maybe you want me to talk about some other stuff. Maybe like, who the fuck's this guy? I don't want to hear his opinion. Which, I mean, I don't want to hear my opinion, so I'll understand it. I won't be mad. I mean, I will be mad, but I won't be mad. Just let me know, and maybe I'll make some more videos in the future like this. Maybe I'll just go back to my shitty xTW footage with terrible music. Yeah, we'll see, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.